Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Tonight our guest is Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight Committee. He's a man who's fought tooth and nail to expose the full horror of the Epstein files. And his quest for the truth has already cost UK Ambassador Peter Mandelson his job after a world-exclusive interview with a scandal-hit Brit last week. Now Comer, a Conservative firebrand from the great state of Kentucky, is following the money. He's forcing the Treasury Department to hand over any financial documents related to Peter Epstein and his fixer-girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Congressman Comer joins us now. Congressman, thank you for joining us. The Epstein files have already cast a dark shadow over Washington and London. It's cost one ambassador his job. What happens next? And what happens with Prince Andrew? We're reading reports now that the scandal-hit royal could be next in your sights.
Well, we're following the money. That's kind of what we did in our last major investigation when we were investigating former President Biden and his family. My background in the private sector is banking, and there are meticulous records that banks keep anytime they suspect that a client is committing a crime. These are called suspicious activity reports. These are filed with the Treasury Department. And I'm very pleased to say that President Trump's Treasury Cabinet is cooperating with us. We have sought all the bank records and suspicious activity reports or bank violations affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein, and we're just going to follow the money. We know that Epstein had several different shell companies, several different LLCs, and he was banking with several different banks. We know that he has hundreds of bank violations. And like I said, if you're committing a crime, the banks will usually catch it. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to follow the money and see where it leads. There'll be obviously people that were paying Epstein money. We're going to figure out who these people are, and then we're going to talk to them.
Moving on to the Treasury documents in a moment, but on Prince Andrew, there were explicit reports in the world's media over the weekend that your committee has found documents related to Prince Andrew. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
We'll probably just hold off on talking about the specifics of individual names. I think most people have seen that he was definitely affiliated with one of the victims from Epstein Island. That's public. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't already know, but we're going to try to figure out who the people were that were accomplices with Epstein. Just because you're associated with someone doesn't mean you're guilty of anything. And we're going to, we believe very strongly in due process, and we're going to give everyone an opportunity to explain themselves. But I'll just leave that part at that. I know that's a big story in Britain and all over the world.
It certainly is. But just to be clear, you're not disputing the reports that there are up to 100 emails possibly discovered involving Prince Andrew. I just need to pick you on that point.
Well, we're going to be transparent with everything that we find. When we get documents, and we've had the estate turn over 2 batches of documents, we've had the Department of Justice turn over 32,000 pages of documents. We put a lot of those online. People can go through and look at those. But other documents we haven't had time to go through yet. We just want to make sure that there are no victims' names that are published who don't want their names published. We know that in talking with some of the victims, some wanted their names in public and some did not want their names in public. So we're trying to respect the privacy of the ladies that were involved in the horrific crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So we're trying to do that, and it takes a little time, but we'll be very transparent with that.
You've obviously got a team combing through things there. When do you expect the next tranche to be released?
Well, we're hopeful that this week we'll get some more documents in. We think that we've gotten the overwhelming majority of documents from the estate. I think there are still some more documents from the Department of Justice. And look, one of the biggest batch of documents would be the interviews that various federal agencies conducted with not only Epstein and Maxwell, but also with other people that were involved in the crimes that were committed at Epstein Island. Many of these interviews are currently sealed in federal court right now. We're trying to get access to those, and I think that would be a wealth of information there.
And you're not meeting resistance currently on having those unsealed? I mean, we'll get on to what's going on in Congress in a moment, but the administration is playing ball now?
Yeah, the administration actually asked the judges to unseal it. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, asked a judge to unseal some of that testimony, and the judge denied it. So we're going to go and go our route through court if we have to try to get those documents unsealed. But I can say that despite what a lot of the media rumors are in the United States, that I found the Trump administration to be nothing but fully cooperative with the House Oversight Committee on this investigation.
On that, President Trump admits he knew Epstein, we know that, but cut ties with him long before, shortly before scandal hit him. He was included in your now notorious birthday book, which was included in your last tranche last week. He insists that's a hoax. But for the administration, are you sensing any further cause of concern?
No, look, we've already talked to former Attorney General Bill Barr, who's no friend of President Trump's, and I think the feeling's mutual. Barr said that he never saw anything that would implicate Donald Trump was involved in any way whatsoever in any of the crimes committed by Maxwell or Epstein. And he went on to say that if there had been something in there, that he felt like the Biden administration probably would have leaked it out before the presidential election. And I agree with that. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So I don't think President Trump has any liability. The Democrats and a lot of the liberal media is trying to make a big deal out of the birthday card. The birthday card has absolutely nothing to do with the crimes that were committed against the women. And when we met with the victims of these crimes, and I asked them, what can we do? What can we do to help you? What would you like to see from this investigation? And they said two things. First of all, they would like for the American people to know the truth about the crimes that Epstein and Maxwell committed. And secondly, they would like some accountability for the people that were involved in funding, that were involved in the human trafficking. They would like some accountability from some law enforcement people that they turned to and told their stories to, but yet the law enforcement never did anything. I think it's safe to say that the government failed these women in many ways by not pursuing justice sooner than they did and by not expanding their investigation beyond Epstein and Maxwell.
Do you think those victims will ever truly get justice?
Well, I hope so. It's very difficult. You know, some of these crimes were committed as far back as 1996. So you're talking about 6 different presidential elections or 6 different presidential administrations.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people have this myth that that administrations leave incriminating evidence behind when they go from one administration to another. I've found that many times that incriminating evidence disappears between the transition period of the old administration to the new administration. But we're going to do our best to try to get the truth to the American people and try to get some justice for these victims.
The hum of shredders, hangs around January during a transition. In Congress, though, some Republicans say they're fighting for transparency, including yourself. But what about this discharge position from Congress Massey of 200 Democrats saying they want transparency? Why not just clear the decks now? Why not fully back publishing all of this? I know we have to exclude the names of victims and the like, but in principle, publishing it all.
Well, what the discharge petition says is, first of all, for the Department of Justice to turn over the documents. It didn't say anything about the estate. I'm leading the investigation at the request of Speaker Johnson, and we subpoenaed the documents from the state. That included the birthday book that the Democrats have made such a big deal out of. Look, let's be honest, the Democrats don't care about transparency. They're not really that concerned that I can tell about justice for the victims. They have one goal, and that's to try to dig up dirt on Donald Trump or try to embarrass Donald Trump. That's why they signed this discharge petition. And it's very unfortunate because our investigation is going to go even further. And look, even if the discharge petition passed the House of Representatives, it's then going to have to be voted on in the Senate. Yeah. The Senate not known for speed or efficiency or getting to 60 votes. So I don't think the discharge petition is anything more than just a tool from a disgruntled Republican and a lot of Democrat and every Democrat to try to embarrass Donald Trump.
So you're suggesting that the Democrats are using the Epstein's victims as political footballs?
Well, so far, that's what it looks like to me. That's a terrible thing to say, but we've had opportunities to stand together and focus on releasing all the documents. I released 100% of the documents when we got the Epstein estate documents in, and the Democrats released one thing: the birthday card. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's not going to provide an ounce of justice to the victims. In fact, the victims, when asked, when we met privately with the victims for 2.5 hours, several Democrats asked them specifically about Donald Trump, and none of them ever said they saw Donald Trump or ever knew of Donald Trump doing anything with on Epstein Island or anything inappropriately with Epstein. So I don't think the liability to Donald Trump that so many of the Democrats and the liberal media are hoping exists. I'm pretty confident that the only affiliation with Trump and Epstein is Epstein was active in the social circles in West Palm Beach, where Donald Trump is, where Mar-a-Lago is, and they saw each other at events. And when Trump found out that Epstein was committing or potentially committing crimes with women, I think that's when he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, and I don't think there's any evidence that would suggest they had any relationship after that.
So in your view, Trump is innocent or entirely?
Yeah.
In that case, Donald Trump, during the campaign for his re-election, put this, Epstein files front and center of a number of his rallies. He wound up the MAGA base pretty successfully on this. We had, MAGA influencers invited into the White House and given the first tranche of the Epstein documents. And then he essentially U-turned, and now he says it's a Democrat hoax. What do you think is behind that change of mind?
Well, it's an odd series of events. It goes back to when Pam Bondi said she had the Epstein list on her files and she was reviewing it. And then they walked back and said there was no Epstein list. I mean, that's a question I think Pam Bondi needs to answer. With respect to the hoax, I don't interpret what Donald Trump said as the Epstein Island criminal activity was a hoax. I think what he means by hoax is it's a hoax that the media is trying to say that Donald Trump ever went to Epstein Island or Donald Trump was ever involved in inappropriate relationships with these young girls or the human trafficking. That's what Donald Trump, in my opinion, refers to as a hoax, not the crimes in general. I think he knew Epstein was a bad person, and that's why he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. I don't think he's kicked very many people out of Mar-a-Lago in the history of Trump's ownership of Mar-a-Lago. So that's what Trump's talking about with the hoax. But with respect to Pam Bondi, I don't think anyone would say she's handled this situation in a perfect manner. Mm-hmm. So I think she has some explaining to do. But at the end of the day, I can say since we've started this investigation on the House Oversight Committee, she's been fully cooperative, and I appreciate that.
But she did say that the Epstein list was, quote, sitting on her desk, and then she said it didn't exist. Yeah. Which one was true?
That's right. I mean, that's very odd, and I think that's left a lot of people confused. From what I can gather thus far, I don't know that there's an actual Epstein list like what people would think. I think the Epstein list, if there is a list of people that were known to associate with Epstein. I don't think it's
like his phone book, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
And being in that is not constituting, some of the names that are in that are, very well-known global figures. Being in that does not, in your view, constitute, being cause for investigation.
Right. Yeah, I think, just because you know someone doesn't mean you're associated with their criminal activity or you have any knowledge of the criminal activity. So I don't know if that's part of the reason that there was some initial resistance by the Trump administration, but I know the president's very frustrated because a lot of the liberal media is trying to say that he's covering up for himself or his friends, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think the president wants this to be learned by the American people and then move on to the next issue. The president's frustrated because he's had a very successful first 8 months in office, and it seems like all the media attention now is on the Epstein files. And,
have you discussed it? Have you discussed this with the president?
I'm sorry?
Have you discussed this at length with the president?
Yeah, I think the president, I think he wants to get the truth to the American people, and I think he's going to work with us to see that that happens. But I don't think that I think he's very frustrated because the media is trying to make a story here about him that's not. Look, this is a president that they said was colluding with Russia. Now we know that he wasn't. When he was warning about COVID coming from China, the media said he was a conspiracy theorist. Now we know it was. When he had reservations about Dr. Fauci, now we know it's true. So there are a lot of things they've said about President Trump that weren't true. And I know he gets frustrated whenever there's a new false narrative, and he believes that there's a false narrative about he and the Jeffrey Epstein, when there's no evidence that anyone's seen that would suggest that there's any type of criminal liability.
What do you consider your role to be, your most important role to be here? Clearing the false narratives around this story, or ultimately seeing it through to its end, and regardless of where it goes?
Well, this was an investigation I asked for, but obviously it's something that's very important to America. It's caught the attention of conservatives and liberals. So what my number one priority is to get the truth to the American people. We're going to try to get all the Epstein files, 100% of the Epstein files, and make them public. We're going to try to figure out who some of these people in the government were that the girls went to and turned to for help, and according to the victims, the government turned a blind eye and did not help them. We want to know who was funding all these escapades on Epstein Island. That's why we're following the money. And once we find out all that, we want to just make it transparent. My committee, we can't arrest people. That's the myth that a lot of people say, why haven't you arrested anybody? All we can do is investigate, and we're going to do a thorough investigation. I think my investigation thus far has been the most thorough of Jeffrey Epstein.
It's certainly causing a wave. Before we move on, I'm just going to have one more go. Do you promise to release any information regarding Prince Andrew should it cross your desk?
Yes, anything we get on that, we will release.
Thank you. I mean, I'm going to change the subject now to the tragic incident that happened last week. Sorry for the slight turn in direction on this one, but Charlie Kirk's murder has shocked the world. It's led the headlines here in Britain. It's led the headlines in America and across the globe. Political violence is, no longer on the fringe, but it appears to be a weapon used by those that can't win arguments. Can I get your response to last week's horrific incident?
Oh, it was terrible. Charlie Kirk did everything right. He went to colleges and universities, and I believe that in America we've had colleges and universities that have gone from trying to teach students how to think to teaching students what to think. And what they're teaching them to think is a far left ideology. And Charlie Kirk would go to the campuses and try to inspire young people and encourage debate and encourage people with differing opinions to come and debate him and argue their point of view. And that's what America's all about. That's what our Constitution's all about. That's what our political process is all about. And a lot of politicians have gotten to the point where they don't really focus much on college students because college students don't have a good track record of actually voting. Usually people in America don't start voting until they get to be 30 years of age. Charlie Kirk started focusing on kids in high school from ages 16 and 17 all the way through college years, and he built up an enormous organization, and he made a huge difference in inspiring people to be involved in the political process. And he didn't fight or advocate for any type of violence or ugliness towards those he disagreed with. He wanted to debate. He wanted to debate in public, and it's just awful what happened to him.
Vice President Vance has said the message from this is no unity. Mm-hmm. Is that the correct tone to strike?
I hope so. I mean, the political temperature is too high. We have too much disagreement. It's okay to disagree, but when your disagreement turns to violence, then that's a problem. And we've got a situation in Washington D.C. where we've September 30th is when we're supposed to pass a spending bill, and you've got Democrats have said we're not going to vote for anything. We're going to let the government shut down. That's not governing. You have a responsibility to govern. We have a responsibility to debate. That's what the House floor is for. That's what the Senate floor is for. But we don't need to be as nasty and ugly. And that applies to both parties. I agree with President Bass.
Talking of lowering the temperature, I want to play you a clip from a speech that Elon Musk gave in London over the weekend. Have a look at this.
Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Today, Elon, I think the British public are telling the world that they're ready to fight back.
Good. Yes.
Come on.
Is language like that helpful from the world's most richest man, possibly second most powerful man in the world?
Well, I think that we all need to take a step back. I think we've all probably said things that could be interpreted wrong. When some people think about fighting, they mean, debating really hard, and some people interpret fighting as actual fighting with weapons. So, it just all depends on your interpretation. But I think we all need to really step back and reevaluate some of our terminology, because I go on TV as much as anyone in Congress, and I get asked a lot of questions, and I defend myself and defend my ideology, and I certainly don't ever want to entice violence or anything like that. I may take I have a vocal, heated disagreement with someone asking me a question or debating me, but at the end of the day, we've all got to understand that sometimes words have consequences, and I think both sides can tone it back a little bit, and we'll all be better off.
I mean, you talk about standing your ground. You've been a fearless fighter for relentless on corruption, on cover-ups, especially under the Obama era, the Biden era. This critics say it's sort of partisan warfare versus actual seeking of transparency. But the way the media, spin stuff, the way that, as you say, the heated debates on the floor are split down very partisan lines. Is real accountability, in your view, possible in Washington these days, or does everything just go into this partisan blender?
Yeah, I mean, we just, the whole political process in Washington is broken right now. And you have the way Congress was set up, it was set up to have compromise. That's why it takes 60 votes in the Senate, not just a majority. And what's happening is people run for office today, and no one runs ads saying, I'm going to compromise. And they say, I will not compromise, and then they get to Washington and they do what they campaign on. They don't compromise. And it's almost impossible to get anything passed. And you have to have moderates. You have to have, you have a lot of liberals and a lot of conservatives, but usually used to the way it worked in the legislative branch, the moderates were the ones that would bring everybody together and govern. There aren't any moderates left. They all got beat. They either got beat in Democrat primaries or Republican primaries, and everyone's either very conservative or very liberal, and it's become a whole lot more difficult to govern. And then I'm going to throw the media in on this to share the blame. You've got networks that are either lean liberal, which most of them do, or lean conservative. And,
well, I think more lean liberal than a conservative.
Yeah, it's a lot more liberal than conservative. But they, if you watch MSNBC, they attack, Joe Manchin, who was a good moderate member. If you watch Fox, they attack a Mitt Romney or whatever. So it's very difficult to govern.
Congressman, while I've got you here, I know a cover-up dear to your heart. What's the latest on the Biden auto pen? It's a sort of fascinating story, that. Do you believe that Hunter Biden's pardon, for example, is valid if it emerges that his dad didn't even sign it himself?
Unfortunately, Hunter Biden's is about the only one.
Oh, no. Funny that, isn't it?
The rest of the Biden family, all of Joe's brothers and his sister-in-laws, the auto pen signed. Dr. Fauci, that one was signed with the auto pen. All the members of Congress, like Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin.
And so, in your view, is the auto pen worthless? It's not a real pardon.
But you're not supposed to use an auto pen on a legal document. But what we found is that no one could say definitively that Joe Biden was the one making the decision.
Yes.
on how to use the auto pen, and that's what the real problem is.
Congressman, I'm going to let you go in a second, but President Trump's arriving in London this week for the state visit. There's lots of things that could go very well. A meeting with the royal family, for example, and the King. There's lots of issues that could go quite badly wrong. Free speech in the United Kingdom is a massive topic of debate at the moment. Do you think it'd be right for the president to raise issues of concern while he's over here?
Well, I think the president's got his own unique foreign policy style, and it's worked. I mean, I think if you compare...
Certainly one way of putting it.
I think he'll make the right decisions, and he knows Great Britain's a friend, and we want to continue to have a great trade relationship.
But is he going to be? Should he be a critical friend on issues like people being arrested for what they tweet and online censorship?
Well, I think if he disagrees with something that's going on over there, he'll say it. That's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of leader he is. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty confident President Trump knows that Britain's a friend and an ally, and we need to keep it that way.
Congressman, I'm going to have one more go. Will we see anything about Prince Andrew in the next tranche of the Epstein files? Before you go on, yes or no?
Probably not in the next batch.
But not never.
Yeah, if he's involved in, if his name's mentioned, you'll see it.
Congressman Comer, thank you very much for joining us on Harry Cole's Save the West. Up next, we have the British politician Alex Burghart, who's leading the charge to force Prime Minister Keir Starmer to release his very own Epstein files. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole's Saves the West. My interview with former Ambassador Peter Mandelson is still causing waves. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is under siege, not just for Mandelson's conduct himself, but for his own blind defence. All those Epstein-linked emails were leaked last week. Joining me now is a Conservative Party rising star, some people say, and a man leading the charge, keeping the Prime Minister under pressure. Alex Burghart, shadow Cabinet Office boss. What's the latest, and what do you think is going to happen next?
So, Harry, since your interview with Peter Mandelson last week, there's been this huge kind of shockwave that's gone through Westminster.
Yeah, I think you could say that.
And it's really ended up right at the Prime Minister's door. And, I'm sure you saw, like last Wednesday, Prime Minister's Questions, Kemi Badenoch goes to the House of Commons following your interview and sticks it to the Prime Minister and asks him whether he's got confidence in Mandelson after all of this stuff's come out. And he says he does.
Yes.
The Prime Minister's got full confidence.
At the same time, emails were emerging that showed that Peter Mandelson was not only stayed in touch with Epstein after he was convicted, but was actively urging him to seek a lower sentence.
That's right. And what we now know is that that Number 10 and the Foreign Office was aware of this when the Prime Minister went to the House of Commons on Wednesday. And yet the Prime Minister still stood up for Peter Mandelson. And there's a big question as to why they did that.
He said that full vetting had happened on Peter Mandelson when he was appointed, and now he's saying if he knew what he knew then, he wouldn't have appointed him now. So, has the Prime Minister misled the House on this?
Well, this is what we're going to find out, because we're pushing very hard to see all of the documentation that the Prime Minister...
Sounds very familiar as what's going on in DC.
We've got our own Epstein files here. Right?
Yes.
The Epstein files, the Mandelson-Epstein files, we're trying to get them out. We want to see what the Prime Minister saw before he went to the House on Wednesday. But we also want to see what he saw before he appointed Mandelson last year. Because ultimately this breaks down three ways. Either the security and vetting process last year failed, which I think is very unlikely. We have very good security services in this country. Or somebody kept that information from the Prime Minister. All eyes on the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who we know is a friend of Mandelson's, been pushing for Mandelson's appointment. That would be very, very serious if the Prime Minister had been kept in the dark. Or third, the Prime Minister saw this information and appointed him anyway and is now in denial about it. But look, the serious thing here, Harry, is that everyone now agrees that Mandelson shouldn't have been appointed.
Yes.
So who is going to take responsibility for that error? And at the moment, no one is taking responsibility.
This is going to be an uphill struggle for you, though. You've written to the Prime Minister directly.
Yep.
I mean, I imagine where that letter was filed. It probably wasn't far away from a bin. You've got a debate in the House of Commons, a 3-hour debate on the floor of the House of Commons.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the Conservatives are in opposition.
Yep.
You wiped out last year at the elections. If you're going to try to use Parliament, motions and wizardry to try and get these files turned over, you don't have the numbers.
So I don't know that Peter Mandelson has the numbers on the Labour benches anymore. And we are going, at some point, sooner or later, we are going to be able to force a vote in the Commons on the release of those papers.
And you're expecting Labour Party MPs to join in the divisions against their own government with you?
If Labour MPs really want to go out and support a man who was backing a convicted paedophile and sex trafficker, well, good luck to them. But I'm not sure that they have that much love left in their hearts for either Peter Mandelson or, for that matter, the Prime Minister.
So it's beginning to look a little bit like, well, what happened with Boris Johnson, where eventually his own party turned on him. Do you really think Keir Starmer is in that much danger because of this?
I've been, I'll be honest with you, Harry, I have been surprised how quickly the Labour Party has cracked over this. You've got Labour Party members coming out in public saying that the Prime Minister needs to go. You will be well aware that there are Labour MPs briefing openly behind the scenes that this can't carry on and that heads must roll. And in the background to all of this, you also have today's new scandal in Number 10, where the Director of Strategy has had to resign because of emails from 2017.
We'll talk about historic online actions in a moment, but just remaining on the Epstein files, two questions. One on the back of James Comer's interview with us there. It sounds like Prince Andrew is in a lot of trouble. I mean, this couldn't come at a worse time for the royal family and the White House and Number 10, who are all arriving in London this week for Donald Trump's state visit. This risks blowing up the whole thing, right?
Yeah, well, look, we said to the Prime Minister last week, let's deal with this now. We don't want things to overshadow the state visit.
But it's going to.
It is now, because what the Prime Minister could have done was just release all the information last week. Instead, it's dragged into this week because he's in hiding. He's trying to hide from the public, hide from the press, what he knew and when. And now it is going to get in the way of the state visit. There's nothing that we can do.
Aren't you doing just what James Comer said the Democrats are doing, which is trying to make mischief at the most inopportune time for a leader they don't like?
This is a Prime Minister who's made mischief for himself. He made a very bad appointment. He hasn't been clear with the public. He may have misled the House. He needs to get this all out in the open.
So it's a question of whether it was his willful blindness, his actual blindness, or just incompetence.
Yes, exactly.
Keir Starmer he absolutely gave you guys a tonking last year, promising competence and honesty and integrity and a new way of doing things. How's that going for you so far? And given how bad this government has been on a number of issues, why are the Tories still in the toilet in the polls?
Yeah, look, as you know, we've got a very complex political situation here at the moment. Yeah, we've got three-party politics for the first time, and that's making life challenging for us. But what I would say to you, Harry, is that last week it was Kemi's questioning off the back of your interview that pulled the crucial bit out of the Jenga tower. Crucial block out of the Jenga tower, which has started to cause Labour to collapse, and that is the sort of high-quality opposition that this country needs.
But is it the high-quality opposition that this country needs? Because you're on, low teens in the polls. Reform are nudging 30.
No, we're in high teens in the polls.
Okay,
right?
all right. You're in the teens. It's not,
but you understand it's a different. We're a couple of points behind Labour, right? And obviously,
the Liberal Democrats lapping at you.
Obviously,
things are not going well.
Obviously, let's see how the Prime Minister's doing. In a few days' time, after this absolute sort of shower of.
If the Tories were the ones leading the charge and being the true opposition, why are you losing sort of great minds of your party? The intellectual thinkers like Danny Kruger.
We have absolutely been leading the charge against Keir Starmer over this issue, and it's because of the Conservatives' action that this terrible Prime Minister is now in deep trouble. And you mentioned Danny Kruger. It's very sad that
he says the Conservative Party's dead.
Yeah, he's wrong, and I'm very sad that Danny's left. But it's obvious that he's making a mistake, and people make mistakes in politics all of the time. And I regret to see that.
You'd have him back if there was suddenly life left in the Conservative Party.
I believe
it was feeling better.
I'm sure that Danny appreciates the parable of the prodigal son.
How far? I'm sure he does. How far are you finding the actions of some of the latter actions of the Conservative government, the last 14 years of Conservative government, as a hindrance to your resurgence? Things like Take example, the Online Safety Act, which has come into force now and is riddled with badly worded legislation that's leaving the ability for Ofcom to try and police the world in terms of online censorship. Things like your own party's campaigning against grooming gangs being censored on X. You've left yourself a lot of bombs in government to ever come back, right?
We obviously lost the election for a reason.
Yeah.
The British public, tend to get it wrong at general elections, and they wanted us out, and they want us out because we made mistakes. And what I would say on the Online Safety Bill, Online Safety Act, is that Kemi Badenoch voted against it, and the woman who wrote it is now a member of the Reform Party. So,
did you vote for it?
I can't remember.
Look, I mean, we talk about a very interesting point. The Conservative Party, from where I'm sitting, well, back here in London, but from where I'm sitting in DC most of the time, looks as dead as Danny Kruger says. Reform are on the march. Labour, spectacularly unpopular in record time, and now people seem to be taking to the streets, painting roundabouts, raising flags in their constituency. We're moving towards a politics in this country that is not focused on Parliament and focused instead on something a little bit more organic.
No, I think that we are in completely unprecedented times. I agree with you on that.
For good or for bad.
But what I don't think these are good times at all. I think if you look at the situation that the country is in now because of the bad choices that this government has made.
And the last government.
We take our share of the responsibility, but this government has made things considerably worse, both in the economy, principally in the economy, where unprecedented business taxes have totally squeezed all growth out. We had 0% growth in July, unemployment up every single month since these people came to power, and the debt, the national debt, completely ballooning. And this is a consequence of what Rachel Reeves did in November.
She would argue that she was left a fairly
she
rocky
might,
ship.
But I don't think anyone believes a word she has to say now, and rightly so. When she took over, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7.
Leaving aside the economy, I just want to talk about the state of Britain more widely.
But you appreciate, Harry, that for like my constituency, which is in Essex, the economy is obviously one of the major things that people think about. Loads of entrepreneurs,
of course,
really thriving business sector until it's been taxed till the pips.
Pretty much every American I meet, as soon as they hear my accent, they ask me one very simple question: what the hell is going on in England? And I'm at a loss sometimes to be able to explain that mothers are jailed for things they tweet in haste and repent quickly. Armed police arresting comedians for a joke they made in Arizona. An Irish comedian made a joke in Arizona on a website that is hosted in the United States, has no vested interest in the United Kingdom, and he lands at Heathrow and is arrested by 5 gun cops.
Outrageous.
We've got people criticised for raising their flag. Obviously, we've seen what's happened in with the repression of free speech. I think it's going to be a big topic of discussion while Donald Trump's here. Do you recognise, is that the country that you want to lead as a party, or do you recognise that? No, how did we get to this stage?
There are a lot of things that need fixing about the country right now.
But how? I mean,
I think, look, there are. If you break it down, firstly, you have to bring back prosperity. Second, you have to try and create a sense of national pride again. I think one of the ways in which government can do that is first by helping people get wealthier, by allowing business to thrive, but also by making sure that government shows that it can fix the problems that really people.
But I mean, the Tories tried to do that for 14 years. They ended up over-regulating and leaving us with this legal mess that we're in.
Remember the situation that the Tories were dealing with. You had, they came in after the biggest financial crisis.
I mean, let's not do 20 years of it.
Well, I'll do it very quickly. We had the biggest, came in after the biggest financial crisis in a century. We then had the biggest constitutional crisis in a century. We then had the biggest healthcare crisis in a century, and which led to the worst inflation and the biggest energy crisis in about 40 years. That was an incredibly difficult 14 years, and we certainly didn't get everything right, and that's why we got voted out. This government now is making mistakes of its own choosing.
Yeah.
And that is what is leading to the chaos that we're finding now in our streets and in our businesses.
I have to let you go, but going back to what's next on Epstein. So you've got a 3-hour Commons debate tomorrow.
Yep, David Davis, one of our senior Tories, will be leading that for us. It's going to be very good debate. Government's got some serious questions.
At what point will we be able to, as you say, threaten this vote to have things turned over?
So as far as I'm aware, we're not going to be able to have the critical vote tomorrow. But we are going to be holding the government to account. Government's going to explain itself, and we're talking to parliamentary authorities to work out just how we can get that moment of crisis.
So it's a marathon. It's going to be a marathon, then, rather than a sprint.
It's not. This is not going to be resolved immediately unless the government and the Prime Minister do the decent thing and just tell the truth, just get it all out on the table, so that we can see what they knew when.
Alex Burghart, thank you for joining us. Still ahead, we fire up our panel. The Daily Caller's Amber Duke and Christina Bobb, attorney for Judicial Watch, will join us to dig into all of those Epstein files and much more. Why free speech is under fire like never before. Don't go away. The Epstein files are still rattling on both sides of the Atlantic, raising urgent questions about power and accountability and costing people their jobs. Joining me tonight for our panel, Amber Duke, senior editor of the Daily Caller, and Christina Bobb, an attorney for Judicial Watch. Amber, let's start with you. These Epstein files have already caused a sacking in London. When can we expect to see sackings in Washington, if ever?
Well, I guess we would have to see I'm sorry, go ahead.
Amber,
I guess
you go ahead.
I guess we'll have to see an analogous situation, which would be if a political leader is seen to have continued praising Jeffrey Epstein after the allegations against him were made public. But I think, the through line here is that the American people want more transparency about the documents. The Oversight Committee, led by Republican James Comer, who was on your show earlier, has been releasing more information, including bank records, the copies of the entries in that diary that was given to Jeffrey Epstein, the birthday card that was given to Jeffrey Epstein, and some other information. But ultimately, people want to know who were the clients of this supposed massive pedophile ring. And I think until they get that, there's still going to be dissatisfaction.
Well, yeah, on that point, Amber, I think it's, Donald Trump campaigned incredibly hard to have these files released and then said, it's a Democrat hoax. Surely the voting public just hear and see the hallmarks of a cover-up.
Yeah, I think that's true to an extent, but I will also say that when you look at polling, you see that people do have very strong feelings about the Epstein files. They believe they should be released. They think that the Trump administration is covering them up, but it ranks as a very low priority issue for them. It's way down in, the 10 to 15 level issue priority category. So in terms of political ramifications as we head into the 2026 midterms, I don't think this is going to be something that's really on voters' radar.
Christina, it may be an issue being blown up by the Democrats for sure and the media, but yeah, as Amber says, not really focusing on voters' minds. But in terms of the victims, you've fought Washington corruption and cover-ups on the front line yourself. Do you believe his victims will ever get justice?
I think there will be some level of transparency, and I think it's absurd that the Democrats are now accusing Donald Trump when Ghislaine Maxwell herself says that he was never involved, he was cooperative, and he actually was one of the informants originally way back in the beginning when they went after and targeted Jeffrey Epstein. And Democrats have had plenty of opportunities. Republicans have had plenty of opportunities. This has been going on since 2006, and the entire Biden administration, the entire Obama administration could have done something about it, and they didn't. So it's a hot potato that has landed in Donald Trump's lap. I think they're doing their best with what they have. They need to get some more information. I don't think it's as clear as people have thought it was, considering this investigation has gone on for 20-something years under multiple administrations. So I think they're wrapping their arms around it. And the interview of Ghislaine Maxwell, I think, was incredibly transparent. I think James Comer is doing what he can to get some information, but they basically need to refresh the investigation because it had grown stale with the politicization of it over the prior administrations.
Christina, I'm not trying to put you out of a job here in any way, but call me old-fashioned, but when people lose elections and then the power changes, going after your sort of political opponents through lawfare, through the courts, used to be the sort of thing of the trick of a dictator in the banana republic. Do we think it's gone too far now in that once an administration wins or loses an election, they spend not time trying to speak to voters to win back support, but instead trying to bang their political opponents up or their kids?
I think it's gone incredibly too far, but the problem we have is the left is still coming after the right. As we have this conversation right now, I am still a criminal defendant for a crime that never occurred. And everybody knows the crime never occurred. And the case got dismissed in Michigan. I'm in Arizona. You've got all of these liberal cases that are still ongoing. And so I love the idea of everybody just taking a break and stepping back. But we can't until they agree to stop. It's a situation where they have guns to our heads saying, put your weapons down. We can't. They have put us in a position where conservatives have to fight back and they have to investigate these people because they're coming after us. And if we don't expose the corruption and we don't expose, and I'm not just targeting left, although the left is the one that's using lawfare the most at the moment, because
they're in opposition.
Right, exactly. But they have put us in a corner and forced us to fight for our life, and we're fighting back, and they're going, hey, stop fighting us. And it's like, wait a second, you guys are the ones that still have open cases against conservatives, against Trump supporters in Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia. I mean, those cases are all still open, other than the Michigan one was just dismissed this week, or last week, I should say. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I would love nothing more for all of this to stop, but we can't until we know we're not going to be targeted again.
I got you. Amber, Congressman Comer was pretty fascinating there on Prince Andrew. Obviously, we've seen the fallout for Peter Mandelson and the government here. What do you reckon? It sounded to me like he was pretty clear that there is some Prince Andrew documentation within the Epstein files that we could be seeing quite soon. What do you think the fallout from that's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll believe it when we see it, I think. I mean, one of the problems is that there's been a lot of overpromising as it relates to the Epstein documents. And we've also seen the Democrats who didn't care at all about the Epstein investigation while Joe Biden was in office, running around with signs saying that Trump is a pedophile and that there's surely going to be something in there, or there is something in there that the Trump administration is trying to hide to prevent his apparent culpability. And yet all of the Epstein victims who are still alive when they came to Washington, D.C., were interviewed by NBC News and said that they had never seen anything untoward from Donald Trump. So I think there is a high degree of caution that people have to take with all allegations until the evidence is presented publicly.
Guys, I want to move on. I want to talk about Elon Musk. He's been blasted as dangerous by our Prime Minister Keir Starmer here in London. He joined a Unite the Kingdom rally. 150,000 people marched on London, organised by controversial figure Tommy Robinson. Over video link, Musk told the British people that violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. Christina, is that useful for the world's richest man to be weighing in the politics of a country that's not his own, supposedly an ally, and using language that at this time, particularly this week, seems pretty off?
Well, I would certainly hope that he didn't mean fight back with actual violence, but fight back by protecting your rights, with your vote, with all of the political process that we have. So I would, having not heard that phrase from him myself, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that that's what he meant.
Let's watch the clip. It's quite stark. I want to get your reaction to this.
Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Today, Elon, I think the British public are telling the world that they're ready to fight back.
Good. Yes.
Amber, I mean, bring you in here. I mean, Elon Musk, we thought he was walking away from politics to go back and carry on making electric cars. He was out of the administration, but he's clearly not out of the public eye in terms of politics. What do you make of that clip?
Yeah, I would have used a different phrase there as opposed to whether or not you use violence. I would say outright, you shouldn't use violence, even if you believe violence is coming to you. He should frame it more in terms of self-defense. All of that being said, I think the key thing here is that Elon Musk has been a consistent proponent of free speech. He obviously has been targeted by the British government for his platform X, which he has been accused of using to spread disinformation, which is apparently criminal now. in the UK and in Britain, and I think it's a real shame that that people there seemingly don't have the ability to exercise free speech, and that really is an existential threat for a democracy.
Christina, the awful incident last Thursday, the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk. I mean, seeing Elon Musk use language like that, especially this week, as we sort of said, is not helpful. But we've seen, it's not just Elon Musk, is it? The left have been celebrating his murder online. The right declaring that they're going to rise up and start a new movement. I want to get both your opinions, but Christina first, how influential, and it seems like a sort of quite blasé question in a way, but just a week on, but how influential was that moment in American history? And are we at a turning point?
100% we're at a turning point. I think a lot of people saw what the left was actually doing. And we can talk about Elon Musk and we can talk about all this rhetoric, but the facts of the matter is when you have one side calling the other side Nazis and Hitler and hitting this rhetoric over and over and over again, trying to justify violence against this one side, and then we see someone like Charlie Kirk assassinated, it really should wake people up to say, you know what, this language is dangerous. To your point in the earlier segment, the language itself isn't violence, but it leads people to violence.
J.D. Vance, the Vice President, obviously a close friend of Charlie Kirk, an ally. They worked very closely together. It's an argument that J.D. Vance would not be the Vice President without the influence of Charlie Kirk behind the scenes. But he says tonight that this is not a time for unity. Is that the right message? And what does he mean by that? And is it too late for words like "come together"?
Well, I think, at least I can't say, his intent, but what I would take from that and what I think he means by that is that the right has no problem with, transgender, with the left living and existing and doing what they want to do. We can coexist. And this assassination against Charlie Kirk really solidified kind of in a lot of conservative minds is the left doesn't feel that way about us. They don't feel like they can coexist with us. And so the idea of this is not a time for unity is we are so sick of being targeted and berated and called Nazis and called Hitler and had, the woke left shoot up our children at schools and loved ones and assassinate people for the way that they speak, that it's a time to stand on our principles and stand on what we believe and not allow the left to take any more ground. So that's the way I take it. I think he's right in that regard. It's not a time to try to find common ground. It's a time to take the ground that we've lost, meaning we can live freely and safely in society without fear. I believe that's what he meant.
And Amber, do you believe that the right will be able to do that with just words, essentially, words and organising? I'm old enough to remember when causes deaths that were taken on by the left ended up with riots, shops boarded up, cars on fire across America. But with the death of Charlie Kirk, we've seen, vigils, candles, and still silence, but, boiling anger, but nothing like a response with violence. Do you think that will continue?
Yes, I do. And conservatives have historically reacted this way to being out of power or to being marginalized. If we go back to the 60s and 70s in the United States, there was a similar, I think, amount of political violence, a lot of it coming from the left at that time, too. Over time, I think liberals stopped engaging in political violence because they captured so much of American institutions and the government. And the reason why we're seeing this uptick as of late is because Republicans and conservatives have taken back power. They've rooted out far left extremism from the university system, from Hollywood, and from the government. And so now they're lashing out.
Do you think that it's too very quickly, one word from each of you, do you think that's, has the Rubicon been crossed? Will this be able to be brought back together, or are we looking at a very divided country and a very divided West going on? Amber, yes?
It's going to be very divided for a while, I think.
Christina, are you more hopeful or not?
I am more hopeful. I think we'll eventually get there, but it's going to be a fight.
Christina, Amber, Duke, that was Harry Cole Saves the West. Thank you for joining us.